Okay, it is 4 p.m., so we will get started. Thank you to everyone for being here today on Zoom for the second of our WiSys Quick Pitch showcases. This April, we are featuring students from UW-Eau Claire, UW-Green Bay, UW-Parkside, and UW-River Falls. Thank you to all the campus representatives who've made this event possible, and especially thank you to all the students who are presenting today. My name is Ray French, and I'm the WiSys Regional Associate serving the Western Wisconsin campuses. Many of our WiSys team are behind the scenes today making this event possible, so thank you. As an organization, we're proud to serve the inventors and innovators on our UW system campuses. We're also excited to be able to bring you events like these as part of our vision for building a culture of innovation for a better future. The goal of the WiSys Quick Pitch competition is to inspire students from all academic disciplines and consider the impact of their research or innovative idea and how their findings could one day benefit the economy or society. Hopefully this helps students put the why behind what they're doing. How it works is that each presenter will describe their project in 3 minutes or less. Each pitch will be evaluated on its overall quality, specifically for the presenter to articulate their topic in lay terms, discuss the problem or unmet need that is being addressed, and share the importance of their findings and draw conclusions as to how their project may impact the economy or society. So today, we will be presenting the quick pitches for 4 campuses. First, we will be hosting UW-Eau Claire students and featuring a 3-person judging panel of UW-Eau Claire representatives. Allow me to introduce them. When I call your name, please turn on your video and give a wave. We are joined today by Dr. Brewer Duran, Dean of the College of Business. And also we have Dr. Carrie Kincaid, former Eau Claire City Council President, and Dr. Dan Kincaid in cardiology at Mayo Clinic. So thank you to each of our judges for being here today and for your support of this event. I also want to thank the Quick Pitch planning committees and the mentors who joined us for training last week. It's really encouraging to see the broad support for this student opportunity, and we could not have put this event together without all of their efforts. Thank you. Now we can get into the main event. Each student presenter will be introduced and cued to start their pitch. Please turn on your audio and video at that time. The timing will start when you start speaking, and after each pitch, we will bring in the judges and they will have an opportunity to ask you a question or two. As we move to the next pitch, the judges can finalize their scores. After the UW-Eau Claire students finish, we will introduce the next set of judges for UW-Green Bay, UW-Parkside, and UW-River Falls students. After all this is completed, we're planning to announce the campus winners by about 6:30 p.m. tonight. In the meantime, presenters and judges, please make sure your audio and video are off. Attendees, thank you for joining us today, and best of luck to all the presenters. So before the first pitch from UW-Eau Claire, we'd first like to share this welcome video from Chancellor Schmidt.
Welcome, students, family, and members of the faculty and staff of the university. This is Chancellor Jim Schmidt from UW-Eau Claire, and I wanted to welcome you to this quick pitch showcase. Congratulations to all of the students participating. Your work in doing the research, taking time to figure out how to describe it to people who would be interested in investing in your research are skills that will take you far. I commend you for being agile during these difficult times and taking advantage of opportunities like Quick Pitch. Best of luck today.
Great, thank you, Chancellor. Now I'll introduce our first pitcher from UW-Eau Claire, and we're starting in the science and technology category. First, we have Michael Bylander from biology, presenting on shifts in leaf investment strategies of sunflowers across climatic gradients in the upper Midwest. And you may begin.
Hello, my name is Michael Bylander, and I'd like to start off by asking you what comes to mind when you think of global warming. Many imagine a polar bear stuck on a shrinking ice cap. However, it is far more than that. Due to the increasing temperatures and shifting weather patterns, global warming will ultimately cause changes in nearly every ecosystem on the planet. My research looks broadly at how plants may respond to global warming, and more specifically, at how they may change their leaf investment strategies in responses to changes in temperature and precipitation. Documenting how wild species are being affected by global warming can help us better understand and predict how many of our crop species will react in the future. My research studied species of sunflowers as model organisms since they are native to Wisconsin and are closely related to domesticated crop species. We sampled sunflower species across the upper Midwest, and the data that I was interested in was how plants invest energy in their leaf growth. I then compared the leaf traits to specific temperature and precipitation levels to better understand how plant leaf investment strategies are correlated with changing climatic variables. After analyzing these data, there were two things that became apparent. First, that rainfall had little to no observed effect on leaf growth strategies. Secondly, that temperature was significantly correlated with leaf growth strategies. In regions that had higher temperatures, my research found that plants opted for a conservative growth strategy, meaning that they invest more energy into developing nutrient-rich, sturdy leaves that live longer and thus lock nutrients in the leaves. While at sites that were cooler, plants were exhibiting more rapid growth by investing less energy to produce thinner and floppier leaves that die faster, releasing nutrients back into the ecosystem quicker. This suggests an upcoming shift toward more conservative strategies as global temperatures continue to rise. A shift towards more conservative leaf growth strategies may cause changes in ecosystem productivity due to reduction in nutrient recycling. Ecosystems play an important role in the global water cycle and help filter and purify the water we drink. Decreasing ecosystem productivity may negatively impact the water quality and future public health. In conclusion, my research found a significant correlation between conservative leaf growth strategies and higher temperatures at the regional level. This finding can be used to predict that we may see an increase in conservative leaf investment strategies in the future due to global temperatures rising. This could adversely affect ecosystem productivity due to reduction in nutrient recycling. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Michael.
So, Michael, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can you speak to, if I were a farmer raising sunflowers, what strategy would I take then in response to what the plants are doing?
So at the moment, I would say there doesn't seem to be any need, because this research showed that plants are investing more heavily into conservative leaf growth, and that should not affect productivity of your farm. However, it would be interesting to keep an eye on how this may impact, and maybe see if you can invest into look into different hybrid sunflowers that maybe do better at slightly warmer temperatures. Because as temperatures are increasing, sunflower production may decrease slightly.
Thank you.
May we ask a question also?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Mr. Bylander, can you just say a little bit about the range of the temperatures that you observed, and if you feel that range was impactful, I guess, or what was the range of the temperature that you saw?
So, okay, yes, of course. So we primarily looked at mean annual temperature and mean temperature of the summer. So for mean annual temperature, I believe it varied by 7 degrees Fahrenheit from the coldest to the warmest. And then mean summer temperature varied between, I think it had a range of 4 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I feel that is significant in the differences of temperatures between the warmest and the coldest.
Were the sunflowers a planted crop?
No. So we looked at native wild sunflowers across primarily Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michael. Thank you, judges. Now, moving on, next we have Sydney Dame and Danielle Zahn from Biochemistry and Molecular Biology presenting on assessment of air exchange rate and COVID-19 transmission. All right, you may begin.
All right. Hello, my name is Danielle, and this is my partner, Sydney. And today we're going to talk about the importance of ventilation when it comes to transmission of airborne diseases. So as everyone across the country is returning back to their version of normal after COVID, wouldn't it be nice to have something inexpensive, easy, and definitive in ensuring everyone's health while doing so? Well, because COVID-19 is transmitted as aerosols, there has been a crucial important factor, ventilation. While many campuses have implemented mask mandates or social distancing, they have kind of missed out on this. However, recent research has highlighted the importance of the transmission through aerosols, and low ventilation rates really have these particles build up and increase transmission risk. And even the World Health Organization has really emphasized the importance of ventilation.
Fortunately, there is a really easy and inexpensive method of assessing the risk of aerosol transmission in our indoor spaces. We're able to use handheld gas monitors to measure indoor CO2 levels, and by entering these measurements into a simple spreadsheet, we can calculate the ventilation rate within these spaces. Ventilation rate tells us how many times per hour the air in a space is removed and replaced by filtered or outside air. We've taken measurements around the Eau Claire campus and have found differences in ventilation rates between buildings, which indicates that some spaces may not be as safe as we would like them to be. For example, one of our newer buildings, Centennial, has an air exchange rate of about 10 to 12 air changes per hour, while an older building, Schneider, has an air exchange rate of only about 2 to 3 air changes per hour. Holding all other factors equal, if we increase the ventilation rate from 3 to 12 air changes per hour, we can decrease the risk of COVID transmission by about 3 times. Based on the measurements that we've made, we're able to identify areas of heightened risk on our campus and recommend specific improvements in air ventilation and filtration. As we begin to open up our public spaces and increasingly return to normal, ventilation provides a definitive assessment of risk and allows us to make the proper changes where needed to diminish that risk of COVID transmission.
So looking forward, this is something that's not only going to be important in combating COVID-19, but any other future airborne disease that comes our way. So ventilation is going to be really crucial in areas with older buildings, if they have low ventilation systems at all. It's going to be really important in places where people can't effectively mask, including restaurants and bars where people are eating and drinking, and places where people are working out, and even in places with small children. And solutions could be as easy as opening a door or a window, which is going to cost effectively $0, or it could be something like the handheld devices we used on campus that Sydney talked about, which can cost about $100 but it's still something that is definitely worth the cost when you think about the definitive transmission evaluation that it does. So all in all, these are really important factors, but the main takeaway here is that ventilation is such a crucial and easy solution in ensuring everyone's health. I'd like to thank you guys for listening to our pitch, and we hope you understand why ventilation is so important.
Great, thank you. Great job. Judges, you can turn on your audio visual and ask any questions you might have.
So this is Dr. Kincaid. So I'm a doctor, and I'm wondering, you probably did not have a chance to look at whether there is any increased COVID infection, in those areas, or is this more theoretical?
These are more of theoretical measurements that we're taking. We haven't had the chance to be able to look and compare actual incidents of COVID transmission or actual incidents of an infected person being in these spaces. So this is just a measurement of a what if there was an infected person in this space.
But we are able to evaluate the actual risk if there is, say, one person in the room that has COVID-19 with 100% masking of everybody else in the room, including the dimensions of the room and the measured ventilation rate from that handheld device that we talked about.
Thank you.
I was interested that you offered a range of cost-effective solutions, I guess more than theoretical solutions. So do you have a sense that because you offered those solutions that your ideas may be taken up and become a practical response for people in crowded rooms or close to crowded rooms?
I think something that we've discussed is that the device is very easy to follow and to use, that even if we were to move it into something more public, like let's say the schools that are opening back up, a student that is maybe of middle school age would be able to operate it and perhaps do it as a science project to measure the ventilation rate within their own schools.
I will also add to that and say that we have taken measurements on campus in our library that have been able to be used to specifically recommend filtration systems that can kind of improve some of the ventilation in those rooms. So there are those direct applications of these measurements.
Very good, thank you.
I won't ask a question. I will just say thank you for pointing out that the building I live in is the one that you were using as a bad example. We've been working on improving the ventilation there, but I suspect that you took your measurements after we had already done that, so it's usually worse.
Yep, very good. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, moving on. We have Carl Fossum next from Chemistry and Physics. He's presenting on understanding the severity of COVID-19, a point of view through the lens of a computational chemist. All right, you may begin.
2.82 million deaths globally. The coronavirus has changed our lives forever, and the end is not yet in sight. Hi there, I'm Carl Fossum. I'm a junior at UW Eau Claire, majoring in chemistry and physics, and I'd like to have a brief conversation about COVID-19. So far, multiple companies have developed vaccines within the last year to combat the spread of COVID-19. However, since viral replication is happening at such a rapid rate, new mutant variants of COVID-19 are rapidly spreading across the globe. We see this here in the US, in Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. Because of this, it's not guaranteed that the vaccines that are out now will always be effective against COVID-19. Likewise, global vaccine rollouts have been lackluster or non-existent. Therefore, billions of people are still unprotected from COVID-19. Therefore, it's important that we as scientists, as human beings, research other long-term therapeutics for treating severe cases of COVID-19. But first, some context. In nature, our bodies naturally fight against viral infection. One way to quantify our ability to do this is through the study of internal oxidative stress. You can think of oxidative stress as how well your body deals with volatile or toxic compounds. When we're young, our bodies have very low oxidative stress. We get sick all the time. We bounce back a day later and we're back in school. As we age, oxidative stress increases and we are less able to fight off things like viruses. When you're older and you get sick, you can be inundated for an incredibly long time. The goal of our project is to understand how varying degrees of oxidative stress impact the binding of SARS-CoV-2 to its human receptor. To do this, we've used high-powered supercomputers here at UWEC to simulate the virus infecting a host cell. We did this using a robust and standard method set by the scientific community known as a molecular dynamics simulation. Results from these simulations indicate that a reduction in oxidative stress reduces the ability for SARS-CoV-2 to bind to its human receptor. In other words, if you have less oxidative stress, you are less likely to be infected by COVID-19, and even if you are, it is less likely that you'll be hospitalized or die from it. We believe that bridging the gap between those who are unvaccinated and those who are vaccinated is critical in stopping and eradicating COVID-19. But how can you help yourself reduce oxidative stress? Natural antioxidants such as vitamin D, vitamin C, and yogurt are great for reducing oxidative stress. However, there's more than just that. Our group's published research on this topic has been cited in clinical trials for a new drug known as butylamine. This drug is currently undergoing FDA emergency approval for treatment of severe cases of COVID-19. We believe that this drug and others are an excellent candidate for global vaccine for global rollout. Together, we can stop this virus. We can heal the economy, and we can prevent thousands of more unnecessary deaths from COVID-19. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carl. All right, judges, any questions for Carl?
Yes, Carl, how do you take your research and implement suggestions for the public? And
Yes.
you gave a couple of examples, but how would you suggest the public or companies use your research?
That's a very difficult thing, and I tried to tread lightly on it because this is published scientific work, and we need the rest of the scientific community to contribute to it in order to validate what we're saying. It's a claim we're making, and it's kind of bold, so we don't want to be too hasty in the conclusions we make. However, the data that we've brought out and the data that other labs around the globe have brought out suggests that if we use drugs like butylamine, like I mentioned, if you can go ahead and say you're a pharmaceutical company, go ahead and develop that, maybe get a government grant for that and then distribute it, that will be a great way for us to try to return to normal. It'll help supplement vaccines. It's not a replacement, but it can help supplement vaccines, especially in those people who are at very high risk for a severe case of COVID-19.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Dr. Kincaid, do you have any information on various disease states that reduce or increase oxidative stress?
That's a great question. Oxidative stress is a very complex biological process, and there are lots of factors that go into it. When it comes to what diseases increase oxidative stress in your body, very common ones, any heart condition, diabetes is another one, any kind of clinical ailments that you can think of, generally speaking, that will increase oxidative stress. Also, anything that might make you immunocompromised, that would also greatly increase your oxidative stress.
And theoretically, any medication that would lessen the oxidative stress should be helpful.
Yes, that is the going claim or the hypothesis from ourselves and the other people in the scientific community.
Very good. Including taking long walks and stuff like that.
Of course.
Lifestyle kind of suggestions, generally good health, such like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, very interesting. Thanks, Carl. Thank you, judges. Okay. Next, we will turn to Avi Mohan and Matt Dewitt from Computer Science. They are presenting on optimizing deep learning architectures for remote sensing image analysis. We begin when ready. Thank you.
Analyzing the world around us is a crucial part of understanding climate change and implementing sustainable urban planning that drives economic growth. Currently, we use remote sensing or satellite image analysis of land cover to achieve this analysis. Land cover analysis is the way in which we track land use developments by understanding how land types like agricultural fields, urban areas, and forests are changing over space and time. This analysis is a key part of the $5.52 billion industry known as Geographic Information Systems. This industry is better known as GIS. GIS allows us to leverage data to make maps that help community leaders and businesses make data-driven decisions. Classifying land use is currently my name is Matt Dewitt, and alongside my partner, Avi Mohan, we plan to optimize this land classification process with artificial intelligence. We will be leveraging AI by training a computer model to classify land cover automatically. This will transform the field of GIS. Classifying land use is currently a painstaking process that requires hundreds of hours of labor to do properly. This process sees field workers go in the field and collect data just to go back and hand classify this data further. This laborsome process is similar to the world's hardest word find and naturally lends itself to human error. This reliance on manual labor has created a massive blocker to land classification that we seek to remove with our research.
Our research focuses on analyzing the lower Chippewa Valley in western Wisconsin, where the population has nearly doubled since 2008. This rapid development has created a clear need for a faster and cheaper land use analysis. So by using modern technology to automate the process, image analysis would naturally be a lot faster. This would also allow us to speedily understand the environment around us and how it's changing. Through this, we are able to track the effects of climate change as well as stimulate economic growth through good urban planning. Furthermore, our model is also built using open source resources, so that makes it widely available to those who would like to use our model too. We also use the concept of transfer learning. That is when information from one model can be transferred to another model that does different classifications. This means we can apply our process to various different geographical areas. So whether we're analyzing, say, a neighborhood in Paris, France, or the lower Chippewa Valley region in Wisconsin, like we're doing in this case, the same model can actually be used. So whether it be from an economic or technological standpoint, our research would bring many benefits to the world of GIS.
Our research will fundamentally change the way in which we go about land use analysis and democratize the process further. Long gone are the days of tireless hours spent in both the field and the office. Our model meets the needs of an ever-changing world and saves communities and companies millions, while still ensuring that we can continue to grow sustainably as a society. Thank you.
Wow, okay. Thank you. Judges, any questions?
I have a question as a former public official who understands that land use is a ubiquitous, constant pain for decision makers. Yeah. And one of the a problem is the land use is so parochial, but we as decision makers must look globally, at least in the Chippewa Valley, in our globe anyway. So did you contemplate a kind of time lag of this development was started in 2010, but by 2045, it's going to look like this. And so we should have made this decision, a different decision back in 2010, for example. So what was the time effect, if there was one?
Yeah, so what we're doing really is providing decision makers like that the tools to do that kind of analysis. So our research isn't about classifying the lower Chippewa Valley, it's about giving the tool in this new deep learning AI approach for them to do that. But with our model, we're able to do it faster than ever before. So you could do analysis like that on a monthly basis and do it cheaper and more efficient and more accurate than ever before, which really, when you talk about the world of decision making and in GIS, opens up a whole nother door to things that we've never thought possible before, and really, I would say, innovates the industry of land use analysis and GIS.
Yeah, the claim of accuracy would be an important tool for a decision maker.
Yeah.
The accuracy of prediction, I guess.
I would say in preliminary work with our model and understanding kind of things we're using, the ballpark is around 98% or higher, which is obviously super accurate in regards to land cover. And the inaccuracies we see are just ways that the land is being treated, and that the computer model is almost right, but the land cover itself is in a wonky way that it can't understand.
Yeah, I just want to add on that, especially since you don't actually need to send people into the field to check all of this stuff, you can just have a computer run it probably in a couple hours. You get those results back almost immediately, so that's really the benefit of our research.
Yeah, public officials would weigh that kind of cost analysis, certainly also. Yeah.
So you mentioned a number of different industries that would benefit. If you were going to market your product, if you will, what industry do you think you'd have the easiest time selling it to? So who would be your early adopter?
I think the most early adopter would definitely be county officials, because they already have a large ecosystem of GIS implemented, and they're doing things like this to provide city officials and county officials the data to make decisions. But I'd also not underplay the impact it'll have on the climate change industry and tracking that. Because right now we have a percentage from 2008 of what our land cover in the Chippewa Valley was that was done by the Department of Agriculture. But since then, we have no firm number on how that land is being utilized. We don't have a percentage of agricultural forest to urban area.
Would be valuable. Then,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Let's keep things moving. We've got Cole Pearson up next from Computer Science and Mathematics. He's presenting on named entity recognition in medical text documents.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. In recent years, a larger percentage of our health records and medical data are being converted to electronic forms. Not only are these electronic health records and digitized documents incredibly valuable for the treatment and care of individual patients, but the growing store of aggregate medical data available can also lead to broader insights in the hands of researchers. My name is Cole Pearson, and I'm a junior in the computer science department at UW-Eau Claire. My project is on the development of an automated system for tagging and removing personal information in medical documents for subsequent use in research. Analyzing massive sets of medical data has the potential to reveal trends leading to more informed medical care, more equitable insurance claims, and other benefits. However, revealing these aggregate insights requires first ensuring that the identities of patients, physicians, health organizations, and other parties are properly protected. One common method of de-identifying medical documents is by finding, tagging, and removing data from them corresponding to a list of protected categories. These might be things like names, places, calendar dates, or phone numbers that could uniquely identify individuals involved. However, manually combing through data sets to remove this private information can often be expensive, in time-consuming, and unfortunately as well, error-prone. These concerns are only amplified as more health data is digitized and researchers' data sets grow. Our project aims to solve this barrier to entry problem by applying the computer science field of named entity recognition, or NER. NER is a type of machine learning by which we first manually identify private information in a subset of our overall data. We can then train a software system to automatically tag the same data by removing then removing or randomly encoding it to obfuscate it according to the researcher's needs. Our project uses freely available NER toolkits, which are general purpose, but have high potential to make this process easier and cheaper for researchers to implement. So far, we've seen promising results using OpenNLP, one such toolkit, to identify the names of people and places in publicly available data sets. And we'll be soon expanding our research, applying this technique to a set of about 2,000 independent medical examiner reports. The summary documents provided by physicians to aid insurance claims and other court cases. Overall, we aim to demonstrate the feasibility of an automated approach to protecting health record privacy, de-identifying personal information in health records with human-like accuracy in a fraction of the time it would normally take to manually process the documents. This automated process will then enable medical researchers to analyze larger amounts of information without the upfront cost of preparing that information to comply with modern privacy requirements. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cole.
So,
Right.
Cole, there's a difference in privacy laws and privacy morals, I guess, between identifying the, for instance, physician and the patient. We go to great lengths in medicine not to identify the patient, and as you say, remove data that might give you ability to recognize that patient. I'm not sure how important it is to remove the physician. Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, so that kind of thing really just kind of depends on your use case for the data. The idea with our project is that the exact categories removed would be something that could be determined by the researchers using our tools. So if the physician's name, was something that could be easily kept in the data and didn't have a massive, a massive issue if it were released, they could leave that in. So we're looking at physicians' names mostly for the purpose of independent medical examiner reports. So in using some of the support data that we have access to, we're required by the IRB and other officials to remove categories of data that wouldn't always be necessary to remove for strictly medical research.
Okay, thanks.
Your topic is salient, of course, right now, with somehow connected to some of the vaccine hesitancy, I guess. Do you feel that if the consumer had some guarantee of more privacy, that it would help health information decisions, perhaps?
I think so. And this would be purely conjecture, but I think if we could show patients that there was a greater level of protection of their data, saying like, this is a process that is known to be very exact and there is a very small chance that information could get out, that could help encourage people to contribute to research and so on.
Yeah. It's a difficult issue.
It is.
Cole, what do you see as your biggest challenge going forward?
Yeah, I'd say right now our biggest challenge is probably working out the small kinks in the algorithm. So right now, say you're trying to identify a person's name, and your sense is like John Smith went to the store. You're tagging John Smith, and you want to remove that name. We're having some issues right now where it will only grab, say, the last name, right? Because in lots of medical documents, you often reuse the person's last name over and over again, but you only see their first name once at the beginning or end. And our algorithm is having a hard time occasionally recognizing that the entirety of that string, John Smith, is valuable and not just the Smith part of that. So giving it additional data and tweaking the parameters to make that less of an issue.
Thank you.
No, that's interesting. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Very good. All right. Next, we will turn to Laura Pryor, also from computer science, presenting on behavioral biometrics-based user authentication schemes using machine learning. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Laura Pryor, and I am a sophomore computer science and criminal justice major at UW-Eau Claire. I would like for everyone to take a second to think about the devices they use every day. Think about how much personal information you have stored on those devices. Passwords, credit card information, sensitive personal data. Now, what would happen if someone was able to get into your device by cracking your password or recreating your face or fingerprint? Suddenly, all of your important information is at the fingertips of a stranger. Currently, many authentication systems use passwords or physiological biometrics, such as your fingerprint, to secure user information. However, these methods have become extremely insecure as technology has advanced. The technology to be able to crack a password or recreate a physiological feature has only gotten better over time. And the glaring truth is that a user's data is no longer as safe as it once was. Throughout this research, I focus on multiple papers that use behavioral biometrics as a way to solve these issues. Behavioral biometrics is a completely implicit way to analyze a user's unique behaviors to make an authentication decision. Such biometrics can include the way a user types or the way they walk. Behavioral biometrics is a better alternative to physiological biometrics or password-based authentication schemes, since a user's behavior is extremely hard to reproduce. For example, it's a lot easier to see the difference between two faces than it is to see the difference between two typing patterns. To make the decision on if a user is authentic or not, these systems use machine learning. Machine learning is where a machine is exposed to, in this case, multiple statistical features of a user's behavior, and through the use of a mathematical equation and the past exposure to authentic user data, the machine is able to learn which data should be classified as authentic and what should not, and this is used in future authentications. This research highlights the strengths and limitations in multiple systems to find the best approach for real-world application. One finding, for example, that this research highlights is the current problem found with the long-term accuracies of some systems due to behaviors changing over time. This is where my research will be moving towards coming next year, is focusing on solving this issue. Overall, the main purpose of this research is to give, in a sense, a guide on what should be done next in order to make behavioral biometric-based systems the new standard for authentication, making the cyber world much safer for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I'm slightly terrified, but We'll see what questions the judges might have.
Laura, so we talked in the last presentation about privacy. Do you expect that users are going to have any more willingness to give up their privacy in terms of behavioral biometrics versus physical biometrics or something else? Is this something that people are going to accept, and why?
Well, a lot of systems that use behavioral biometrics, they don't have to take any extreme personal information from you. It's basically just like how, for like touch typing, it's how long your finger is pressed on the screen. And so it's all information that is connected to the user, but also not. And considering going against physiological biometrics have a lot more privacy concerns than behavior would, because like your fingerprints are used in police documents and all of that stuff. So having the use of behavioral biometrics makes it safer. So I feel like users would be more willing to use that since they don't have to have such pertinent features of themselves being analyzed.
I can foresee a problem where you have my biometric analysis, and then all of a sudden I break my finger and my typing changes. So you have to have some way that I can still access my information. Yeah, so I'm sure that's something you are going to work on. I don't suspect you have an answer to that right now.
Yes, so that is currently what is a big issue right now. I touched on it a little bit, is when a behavior changes, sometimes the training can't keep up with that. So what I am going to be focusing on is using the training portion of machine learning and making it more dynamic. So instead of just training at the beginning and then using it for authentication, it's consistently training with each authentication it makes. And if there is a circumstance where it fails the authentication, you'll still be able to use like a two-factor authentication, like a password, to be able to continue to use your device.
Just briefly, would this be a voluntary service that, let's say you buy a new computer, you want to make it biometrically protected. So you would go through, you would volunteer some typing, and you volunteer to enter these behaviors. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. So it would be completely voluntary, and you could give the first couple, like you said, typing patterns and stuff like that for the system to analyze.
Okay, it's spooky. Just for our age group, it's spooky.
Yes, I can understand that.
Wow.
Oh, very good, Laura. Thank you. And it's interesting to think about coming down the line here. It's the next stage.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we will turn to Nathaniel Severson and Alex Narkovich-Jodko from Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, presenting on macromolecular crowding, insights into protein function and drug delivery. All right, you may begin when ready.
Hello, I'm Alex Narkovich-Jodko, and this is my colleague Nathaniel Severson, and I want to open up with a question. Have you ever been moving slowly through a traffic jam or stuck in a crowd? If so, you're probably familiar with that feeling of confinement, not really being able to move as freely as you normally can. You can't really perform the same tasks, let alone at the same efficiency, because you're in this environment that you're not very used to. The same goes for the smallest job performers in your body, proteins. Proteins perform some of the most important processes in your body, from taking your food and making it energy you can use, to allowing you to breathe. Because of this, proteins are also the target of many medications. These medications provide various treatments for diseases from the common flu to even cancer.
The inside of the cell is a crowded place, surrounded by little things called biomolecules of various sizes, It's here that proteins get their jobs done. From treating diseases like fighting diseases like cancer to making the building blocks of your cells. So naturally, it's been a topic of rigorous research regarding how proteins function and move around within your cells.
However, this is where the issue lies. Most protein studies are done in simple salt buffer solutions, not accurately representing the crowded environment that they normally operate in. This puts the protein out of its natural environment and inaccurately portrays its capabilities.
That's where our research comes in. We are setting out to directly visualize the effects of crowding and gain an insight into the natural work environment of proteins in your cells by using sensitive microscopes and computer simulation techniques. This allows us to gain a more full and accurate understanding of how proteins get their vital jobs done.
And now, with the advent of more and more protein-based medications, knowing how these drugs work in your body is more important than ever. And with knowledge regarding how these crowding effects change protein function in our cells, we can bring about a revolution in drug design and drug distribution.
Where the revolution comes in lies entirely in how drug design can be optimized to work best with the proteins in your cells by accounting more fully for what the natural work environment inside of your cells is truly like.
With our understanding of protein dynamics and simple salt buffer solutions that we have right now, drugs are being made for proteins that are operating in an environment that it doesn't naturally operate in. So for that reason, if we can learn exactly how crowding effects change protein function in our cells, we can create medicine which not only reaches our protein workers, but also allows them to work with the medicine most efficiently in the environment that they're most familiar with. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. Interesting. Are there questions from the judges?
What's your next step in your research?
So right now, Nathaniel and I are prioritizing microscopy experiments where we observe these crowding effects under a microscope. Next, we've already done some preliminary data with computation, but we're going to go more intensely into the computer simulation side of things. And we're going to look at groups of protein in these, we would make them into like these spheres of, in crowders and water, and then we would simulate their behavior.
Thank you.
How are you labeling the different proteins that you're observing so that they do show up with, I assume, some type of electron microscopy?
So actually we use atomic force microscopy. So we focus on one protein currently, which is our lab's protein of interest. And so we know that that protein is the only one there. And then we make a solution with, which is either dilute in that buffer salt solution that I was mentioning earlier, or with crowders. And then what the atomic force microscope does is it gives us a topographical representation of our surface. So we can see, for example, in a dilute solution, there's an even film of protein across our sample. But in a crowded solution, you could see they form these little aggregates. They separate from each other, which suggests a change in structure and then in function.
So the scalability to the complexity of a human body is something I'm sure that you contemplate. Sort of the applicability is quite a ways down the road.
Yeah. So currently, with the microscopy, you get a general, like, direct visualization of what's going on. And then with simulation, simulation is obviously constantly being innovated and pushed forward. So it's going to take a very strong computer to get an exact simulation of what's going on. But for now, we can take, a small grouping of proteins and try and draw observations from that.
Well, pharmacology is very important.
Yeah, where we
in
stand
healthcare.
right now. Yeah.
I'm sorry, are we having
Yeah, where
connection?
we stand right now, it's the best we can do is add powders. Oh, what's that?
I think Ray, I think he just heard your message when you asked.
Okay, sorry for the challenge there.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Great job, guys. All right. Next, we'll turn to Niall Siddiqui from Computer Science and Applied Mathematics. He's presenting on physical layer authentication using machine learning. A review. All right, Niall, you may begin.
$12.5 billion. That was the combined total that the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense requested for their entire cybersecurity budget, and that was for just this fiscal year of 2021. It's to no one's surprise that global governments and public and private companies alike highly value cyber and informational security in this day and age. My name is Niall Siddiqui, and I'm here to talk today about combining math and computer science to strengthen every facet of cybersecurity. Data security starts with account security. If no one knows your password or PIN, then your account is safe and no one will be able to access it, right? Well, we've all witnessed how data leaks and breaches make passwords seem less secure than ever. So what happens to our account when our password is leaked? These flimsy one-shot types of authentication are called static authentication methods. My research focused on what we call continuous authentication, a security protocol that can still kick a user out of an account if it is detected that this is not an allowed or trusted user, even if this nefarious user had correctly inputted the account's password to initially access it. Specifically, my research focused on how we can use the unique physical attributes of our personal devices, like our laptops and our phones, to increase the security of public networks. This is called physical layer authentication. The network examines all the really intricate physical details, hence the name, to determine if a device can be trusted or not when it connects to a network. And this doesn't just concern the Department of Defense or the Department of Homeland Security. We all use public networks all the time. The McDonald's Wi-Fi, Starbucks' Wi-Fi, even UWEC's own university Wi-Fi is technically public. On an even larger scale, the entirety of the nation's newly built 5G networks are all public. Therefore, these robust methods of authentication are being heavily researched and vehemently sought after. Furthermore, these protocols use complex and modern mathematical algorithms that have been mentioned before, called machine learning algorithms, and these are used to optimize their performance. In a nutshell, machine learning algorithms are capable of receiving large quantities of data and extracting meaningful patterns or features from them, work that would be impossible for a human to do just by looking at millions and millions of rows of data. My work revolved around gathering and categorizing all the recent advancements that have been made in the field as reported in the academic literature. After reviewing lots of literature pertaining both to physical layer authentication, as well as continuous authentication in general, and publishing a paper with my findings, my current research is now investigating how we can use an individual's mouse movements and behavior for user authentication. This means that rather than using the physical attributes of a device for network security, I'm now transferring that information to using mouse behaviors for user authentication. Now, the beautiful thing is how different yet similar these topics are. This new mouse behavior topic might be completely different, but it still largely uses the same logic and math I became familiar with after my paper on physical layer authentication. Additionally, we are also utilizing complex machine learning algorithms to further boost the strength of this mouse behavior-based model. With the modern age's new emphasis on adaptability and information security, I hope I've made it clear how I hope to improve and impact the field of computer science and cybersecurity with my current research. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Niall. Any questions from the judges?
Oh, Niall, you did a review of all different types of physical layer authentication. I'm assuming that you feel that mouse movements are the most promising way of doing this, and why did you choose that particular motion?
Right. It's kind of hard to describe in 3 minutes, but the more detailed version is that physical layer and mouse behavior, those two things are both considered continuous authentication, but there's different applications for them. So I had mentioned that physical layer is more for like Wi-Fi and public network security, and mouse behavior, that model is used for user authentication. So to answer your question, they do have different applicabilities to different fields. Now, the reason I specifically chose to transfer my understanding to mouse movements and behavioral biometrics is because that is a more robust and I would say lucrative field or area. There's been a lot of funding and research going into both fields, but definitely behavioral biometrics has been pulling ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm always interested in the policy question because of my background. And do you think in the future it will be that important to recognize what individual is using a machine? We're still going to have that connection. So I'm not making myself very clear, but what if we just have chips under our skin someday? We have computational, graphs under our skin. Then
yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's hard to find out where we draw the line of how far computational advancements will go. Where does the line stop about implicitly finding out what user is using an account just off their mouse? And like you mentioned, why don't we just jump the line and skip to chips under our skin? So an important thing to note about, I think, continuous authentication in general is that it is not needed to replace our entire system. We can continue to use passwords and PINs, but we can use continuous authentication as an extra layer of security. So obviously you had mentioned before that, some people might not be open to the idea of chips in their skins, and that's completely understandable. So we can use continuous authentication not as a complete replacement of our field, but rather as an added security layer for accounts. So for a quick example, if someone found out your password for your bank account and they were on the website and looking through your bank statements and looking at your money, that continuous authentication layer would offer that extra layer of recognizing that your mouse movements are not regular and therefore kicking you off the account before anything detrimental can happen.
Hmm. Wow, it's pretty spooky. That doesn't sound very judge-like, I guess, but it's meant in the most positive way that we are impressed with all the research that we've heard today. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. This behavioral biometrics is an interesting area that we'll look forward to seeing the next steps in that. So thank you, everyone. We'll keep on moving. Next, we have Madeline Vetter from Environmental and Ecological Biology presenting on comparison of leaf damage and trichomes of Wisconsin helianthus populations grown in varying environments. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Madeline Vetter, and I'm going to talk about things that bug me. Pest insects, specifically pest insects on sunflowers, which is what I've been doing research on and seeing how sunflowers react to pest insects. We chose sunflowers as our model organism as they've had important agricultural and cultural uses for centuries. Native to North America, sunflowers are used today for oil production and food in addition to being beautiful. Plants have a variety of defenses against pests, the main one being the hairs that you see on some types of plants, like the hairy stems of tomatoes or sunflowers. Those hairs help block insects from eating the plants. So the question I wanted to answer in this research is, can sunflower species alter their defenses to better prevent insect damage? We know that the hairs are a plant's main defense, but can those defenses be changed at all due to different predator types or amounts? Plants can sometimes physically change due to something called plasticity. So without plasticity, an organism, when exposed to different environments, will always look the same. But with plasticity, when an organism is exposed to different environments, it might physically change in response to those environments. Plasticity is commonly seen in plants. If you've ever seen a plant stretch to get closer to light or plants staying short due to windy environments, that's what plasticity is. I wanted to know if there's plasticity in response to the insect damage found in sunflowers. To test that, we took measurements on plant defenses and insect damage. We assessed 3 species and over 650 plants in total in 3 types of settings: a greenhouse, common gardens, and wild populations across Wisconsin. This allowed us to compare growth in controlled environments and natural environments. In the field, the leaves on each plant were scored for damage such as aphid damage, leaf mines, and other bug bites, and then leaf samples from each plant were collected, and I was the one who had to count hairs on each leaf for all 650 plants under a microscope. After all data were collected, we combined all of the variables and analyzed them. We found differences both among the species and between growing environments within species, which means it is possible that plants are upregulating their defenses in response to insect damage, indicating some level of plasticity that may be environmentally driven. So there's a reason you are all listening to me chatter on about leaves and bugs and why it's so important to me, and I'm sorry for keeping you in suspense. But this can tell us more about how they could potentially show higher tolerances to changes in the environment, like climate change, and can tell us more about how they may respond to novel predators. We live in a more northern climate, even though it doesn't feel like it these past few days, and as the climate gets warmer, things that are based in warmer climates are able to move farther up, which is a huge problem for plants because they can't move north to escape brand new predators from the south. The more we know about how plants can adapt on their own, the more we can do to things to help, like focus agricultural efforts such as pesticide development. So to me, it's important to think about how we can help keep them around for future generations and enjoy them as much as we do. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all enjoyed hearing about my research as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you.
Thank you, Madeline. That was great. Questions from the judges?
Well, my question would be, if you found that plants do adapt and can regulate themselves to changes, what is the time frame so that it helps human beings, or it helps maybe the 2 generations from now?
So in this research, it's kind of mainly focusing on if plants have that ability at all, because some species of plants don't have that ability to change based on their environments and are kind of just stuck with what their genetics gave them. So showing that they do show plasticity in their defenses, because sunflowers do show plasticity in other ways, can tell us that they may have more tolerances to environments so that we don't have to, I'm not going to say don't have to worry about them as much, but that they can withstand different environments. And it's definitely something that we can't put off for a couple generations because it's already happening. So
yeah, I see.
So, oops, sorry, go ahead.
Is there a way that this plasticity could be transferred from species to species?
So I'm looking at several species in the same genus. We looked at 3 species, and so some of them are showing different types of plasticity as opposed to other ones. We finished analysis on 2 of the 3 species that we're looking at, and we're this close to being done with the 3rd one. But it's actually interesting. I wasn't expecting to see differences between species. I was expecting all species to kind of show it one way or another, but I think that question could be further explored more in a larger scale research study. We had different amounts in different areas. We had 20 wild populations and 450 plants in the common garden, but in the greenhouse, we only had 5 plants of each species. So I think that it can't exactly be transferred between species, but in order to find out if it's actually shown in that species, we would need a larger scale research study.
So just quickly, it sounds to me a little bit like you're speaking a little bit about Darwinism, that plasticity in plants increases their survivability in times of climate change. So how can you apply that for those who are trying to protect our plant species?
So the interesting thing about heritability as opposed to evolution, about plasticity as opposed to evolution, is the plasticity shown in these species is not heritable because they have that set amount of genetics, but it's based on the environment that they're put in. So it's important for us to know even if they have that at all, because just by looking at their genetics, we might not know if they're able to show that phenotypic plasticity at all. So it's harder to control. We can't really make them express plasticity, but it's good to know if they have that ability as opposed to not having it. Like one species I look at is showing an increase in response to some of these, the hairs are called trichomes. They're showing an increased response in some of the glandular trichomes that secrete chemical compounds in response to insect damage. So we might want to look at what those chemicals are that they're upregulating, and that could potentially tell us something more about, oh, so this is the thing that's going to prevent these pests, and it'll be something that the plant is already creating, so it won't be detrimental to the plant. So it'd be really good to look at it that way, especially in terms of keeping all of our plants safe in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, judges. Very interesting discussions. This is great. So that'll conclude right now the Science and Technology category for the student pitches at UW-Eau Claire. I'll give the judges just a quick second to finish tallying up their scores for Science and Technology, and switch over to science, social sciences and humanities. So that's our next category of students. And so first, in this category, we have Ethan Blaney and Andrew Lindus from Management, Entrepreneurship, and Economics and Political Science. They're presenting on investigating utilization trends for a supplemental nutrition assistance program, market match incentive program at the Eau Claire Farmers Market before and during the COVID pandemic. Thank you. You may begin.
Have you ever been hungry and not been able to afford food? Most people would answer no, but about 1 in 5 American children face food insecurity. Is half of your plate at each meal made up of fruits and vegetables? Most people would also answer no, with only 1 in 10 US adults meeting the recommended daily servings of fruits and vegetables, and children faring even worse. The US Department of Agriculture operates many programs to assist low-income households to access healthy foods, including the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, and the Women, Infants, and Children Program, WIC. Research shows that participants in government food assistance programs such as SNAP and WIC tend to purchase fewer healthy foods, including fruits and vegetables, compared to the overall population. Farmers markets offer access to fresh, local, and healthy foods, especially fruits and vegetables. But the data shows that low-income households are much less likely to shop at farmers markets. The Eau Claire Farmers Market offers a market match program to incentivize SNAP participants to shop at the market. In 2020, COVID-19 increased the number of families facing food insecurity, while the Eau Claire Farmers Market also faced challenges regarding how to operate safely, and all families faced challenging decisions about where and when to shop during the pandemic.
Our research examines the utilization of the Eau Claire Farmers Market SNAP Market Match program, as well as SNAP households' views regarding the program in 2019 and 2020. Our findings show that SNAP households used the Eau Claire Farmers Market Market Match program in 2020 compared to 2019, with a slight increase in the average number of farmers market visits for SNAP households. However, most of this increased utilization resulted from a higher SNAP caseload due to the pandemic. We also see that in both 2019 and 2020, less than 10% of Eau Claire County SNAP households shopped at the farmers market, and nearly half of the SNAP shoppers only visited the market one time. Additionally, our data reveal important benefits for the SNAP shoppers, including increased purchasing and eating of fruits and vegetables, and a decreased likelihood of running out of food. Our project objectives are to continue working with community partners to raise awareness of the Eau Claire Farmers Market Market Match program and identify as well as reduce barriers to SNAP households shopping at farmers markets. Our goals also include raising awareness about the general public regarding food insecurity and poor nutrition, while highlighting the importance of this program. Our future plans include learning more about SNAP usage at farmers markets across Wisconsin and in other states to compare programs and explore collaborations. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Ethan and Andrew?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Can you speak a little bit to what you think might help bring more SNAP families to the farmers market? So I think if I understood your presentation correctly, there was increased usage of SNAP at the farmers market, but it was not on a family by family basis, it was more new families. So how do you get individual families to utilize the farmers market more?
Well, we actually have seen an increase in both the amount of people going as well as the frequency of visits. So that is a good sign. It's tough to find a way to get into the farmers market. There are a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges we've noticed is that farmers markets do not give you access to all the foods that grocery stores do. So that's a huge problem. We also noticed that transportation tends to be an issue. So we've discussed maybe there's an opportunity to offer a shuttle service that's more easy to utilize for patients to get to the farmers market, or maybe some kind of mobile farmers market thing that could work its way around town. But it is an issue. Luckily, we are seeing increased usage of our program from gaining new families, but also we continue to see the families that go to the farmers market already continue to visit more frequently. And Andrew, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
The only other thing that we kind of thought about potentially doing was more advertising the Market Match program as an incentive program, because one of the issues that I believe we came across was the fact that the only way you can use the Market Match is if you know that the Market Match exists. And so there is discussion as to ways that we could advertise that to SNAP families and kind of bring more awareness to the program itself to say, hey, this program is available to all SNAP members. All you need to do is go and swipe your card, and then you could get more purchasing power. So that was another thing we discussed with our research group.
Thank you.
Of course, this topic is of interest to me as a public policy challenge. We've examined the farmers market as a central location for other reasons, but the transportation issue is a barrier. It's a flat out barrier to using the downtown market. So, and also sort of an image of the downtown location as a place where only snappy people go. It has a sort of socioeconomic culture about it. So I wondered, you sound like you're interested in more research, and perhaps what would you think about what is the location of the market? How does that impact usage? And maybe that's come up already, but I've worried or thought about that many times. So anyway.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know entirely how to tackle that question. It is a tough issue. I will say that you talk about it's more of a snappy place and people kind of look at it that way, which is one big reason why in recent years the SNAP program, switched from using vouchers or the coupons like they have to an EBT card, which is more like a credit card, which I am sure you may be aware of that. But that is one thing that I think really takes away the stigma. For example, when Andrew and I work at the booth at our farmers market, when you're coming to redeem your SNAP tokens or whatever, it looks exactly the same as anyone who's trying to get tokens using a credit card. So I think that's one thing that was a huge step in the right direction for kind of breaking past that socioeconomic status of things. But yeah, that's really all I can think of off the top of my head on that. I don't know if Andrew, if you have anything else to add on that either.
I think you explained it pretty well, that the card significantly helps with the stigma. And again, going back to the previous question, it's more, I feel like maybe it's less of location and just awareness. And if we bring more awareness that it's where it is and that the program is available, that more people would be able to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your questions.
Wonderful. Okay. So next we have Mark Fior and Katrina Kawak from Geology. They're presenting on an analysis of lunchtime waste sorting habits at the University Student Center. Thank you. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Katrina and my partner is Mark, and we'll be speaking on lunchtime waste analysis habits. Landfills across the country are filling up. On average, people throw away 7.5 pounds of waste every single day. In the study, we watched as people disposed of their waste at the campus student center to learn about their waste disposal habits, including how long they spent at the waste disposal bins. At the UWEC Student Center, most lunchtime waste is food leftovers. If composted, their food waste would provide nutrients for soil and avoid producing methane gas at the landfills. Previously, our research group conducted waste audits to learn what had been thrown away in each of the bin and created solutions to help improve our waste quality. However, our waste quality was not improved. We realized we needed to see how people were disposing their waste rather than conducting post-disposal audits. Our current goal is to gain an understanding of the waste habits and behaviors of students as they dispose of their lifetime waste. We documented whether each student utilized the landfill, recycling, and or composting bin, how much time they spent at the bins, and if they were sorting their waste or not. Results showed over 75% of the students that disposed of their waste and that we observed spent less than half a second at the waste bins. Clearly, the time that they spent disposing their waste did not match the time that they spent in line, purchasing their food, or consuming their food. We observed that most of the time students should be using more than one bins for their waste. Over half the time when more than one bin was used, it was only the recycling or the landfill bin, even though most of the waste was food waste that belongs in the compost.
We're hoping to see more student use of the compost bin, but our data reveals two important adverse trends. First, 3 out of every 4 students only used one bin, and over half of these times, they just used the landfill bin. Second, the landfill bin was used in 80% of all instances, but the compost bin was used in only 15%. Don't forget, food is the #1 contributor to lunchtime waste. It should be noted that not all landfill waste can be composted, but this finding showcases a significant number of instances where students could have put food waste in the compost. Overall, we observed a roughly equivalent bimodal distribution of students who either tried and at least partially succeeded in sorting their waste or did not make any effort to sort their waste. Therefore, we need to develop 2 distinct marketing campaigns, one that helps those attempting to sort their waste do a better job, and one that gets at changing the habits of those who don't appear to try at all. Throughout all of this, we must keep 2 things in mind. For those who are attempting to sort their waste, issues such as a lack of educational training from the university and from other sources mean better marketing campaigns and communication campaigns regarding waste disposal are needed. Second, waste sorting is a habit that one often completes without having to think about it each time, just like muscle memory. Therefore, we need to further investigate effective ways to influence and change people's habits. Currently, the only places that are open for students to compost their waste are in the Davies Student Center and in only certain sets of bins in Davies. As we move forward, we need to both address the 2 distinct interventions for each group in the distribution, for those who try and for those who don't, and campaign for increased access to composting across campus. Thank you all for your time, and remember, sorting waste is in good taste.
I like that catchphrase. Thank you. Any questions from the judges?
We just a very quick question about labeling. If you had a chance to figure out if people understood what a landfill is and what composting is, what are those 2 things, and if they could discern what went where, I guess. Did labeling enter your research at all?
It currently is going into it. So we, as our next step, are creating a survey to send out to all students that go to UWEC, where they would answer questions on how well they do waste sorting, what they think waste sorting is, where they would think goes into the landfill, and items such as that, just to gauge where our student population is in terms of their waste sorting trends in their own perspectives.
Yeah. I think landfill is a confusing label.
I agree.
For sure.
We have had, just to add on to that, we have had switches in our marketing. So usually we have pictures that accompany our landfill, recycling, and compost bins. And so with the change of upstream of like our products, we consistently have to change those photos that we have on top of the landfill bin. So that adds to further issues as students don't know whether it can be landfill, recycled, or composted because our products are continually changing. So another issue we face.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark and Katrina.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Next, we have Sakumi. Kawamoto and Chloe Newth from Economics, International Business and Management, presenting on examining trends and patterns in Chinese and American support for participation in the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement over time. Thank you. You may begin.
As the two largest economies and greenhouse gas emitters, China and the US are essential to the development and implementation of international policies to address climate change. What should be done to address climate change, and how should countries cooperate? What is the Paris Agreement, and do you support it? American responses to these questions vary considerably, but what is known about how Chinese citizens would answer these questions? Therefore, we surveyed over 18,000 Chinese and American citizens in 2015, 2017, and 2020 to provide analysis and comparisons of support for international cooperation through the Paris Agreement. Some respondents in each country were asked about supporting the Paris Agreement with no mention of the other country, which is the control group. The remaining respondents were asked about supporting the Paris Agreement conditional on knowing the other country would not participate in the Paris Agreement, which was the treatment group. For the control group across all 3 years of surveys, just under 86% of Chinese respondents supported the Paris Agreement, compared to just over 70% of Americans. For the treatment group, nearly 70% of Chinese respondents supported the Paris Agreement, conditional on knowing the US would not participate, compared to just under 55% of Americans, given that China would not participate.
Our results show significantly more Chinese support for the Paris Agreement compared to Americans, but also revealing decreased support in both countries when it is known the other country will not participate. And these findings are relatively consistent over the 3 years. We also see significantly more variation in support among American respondents compared to the Chinese. Underlying the US variation is a significant political division, with liberals showing the most support for the Paris Agreement and conservatives showing the least support for the all 3 years. Given that the US withdrew from the Paris Agreement in 2017 and recently rejoined in 2021, our findings regarding non-reciprocity have a particular relevance for the current landscape of international climate change policy. Our project objectives are to continue working with our Chinese and American partners to collect the data and disseminate information to stimulate and facilitate discussion regarding international climate change policy in these two important countries. Although our planned 2020 trip to China was canceled due to the pandemic, we are planning to return to China in 2022 to conduct more in-person research and collaborate with our Chinese faculty and student partners. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Other questions from the judges on this research?
Were you able to conclude that popular support for something as large as the Paris Climate Agreement and can mean so many different things, but still popular support is, were you able to find out that it's an important component of moving the agreement forward? What regular people think about it?
Yeah, so it was kind of contingent on if you answered the survey as we randomized the question. So if you got the question, would you support the Paris Agreement, knowing that the other country would. So there's parts to that. And then with your question, I don't overall support, do you mean?
Yeah, well, I guess I perhaps asked a difficult question, but what is the importance, would you conclude, that the general public is aware and supports something as a large idea like the Paris Climate Agreement?
That's a good question. I can go back and pose that question to my professor, but
no,
right now I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to challenge to challenge. It's an important question, even in local politics, about how much do you count on people to support an initiative? How much? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? No. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your research. And now we will move on to Zach Ledwith and Madeline Zenner from Business Marketing and Finance and Economics, presenting on characterizing the usage of benefits offered through the Women, Infants, and Children Farmers Market fruit and vegetable programs in Wisconsin before and during the COVID pandemic. Thank you. You may begin.
Is half of your plate at each meal made up of fruits and vegetables? Most people would answer no, with only 1 in 10 US adults meeting the recommended daily servings of fruits and vegetables, and children faring even worse. Have you ever been hungry and not been able to afford food? Again, most people would answer no, but about 1 in 5 American children face food insecurity. The US Department of Agriculture operates many programs to assist low-income households to access healthy foods, including the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, and the Women, Infants, and Children Program, WIC. Research shows that participants in government food assistance programs such as SNAP and WIC tend to purchase fewer healthy foods, including fruits and vegetables, compared to the overall population. Farmers markets offer access to fresh, local, and healthy foods, especially fruits and vegetables, but data shows that low-income households are much less likely to shop at farmers markets. The WIC Farmers Market Fruit and Vegetable Program provides WIC households vouchers redeemable for purchasing fruits and vegetables at farmers markets.
In 2020, COVID-19 increased the number of families facing food insecurity, while farmers markets also faced challenges regarding how to operate safely, and all families faced challenging decisions about where and when to shop during the pandemic. Our research analyzes the issuance and usage of farmers market fruit and vegetable program benefits among Wisconsin WIC households in 2019 and 2020. Our findings show that despite an increase in the number of WIC households due to the pandemic, fewer benefits were issued in 2020 compared to 2019, and the utilization of benefits among WIC households also declined. In speaking with state WIC representatives, we learned that there were many complex challenges from the pandemic that led to this outcome. We also see that some counties experienced greater pandemic impacts than others. For example, the reduction in issuance and usage of benefits for the 3 counties in the Chippewa Valley was lower compared to the state as a whole, while Milwaukee County saw larger reductions. Our project objectives are to continue to use data to share and raise awareness about food insecurity and poor nutrition in Wisconsin. Our goals also include learning more about the funding and operation of the Wisconsin WIC Farmers Market Fruit and Vegetable Program, as well as challenges facing the program. Our future plans include developing connections with WIC agencies in other states to compare data on issuance and usage of WIC Farmers Market Fruit and Vegetable Program benefits, and to learn more about this program nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes. Can the two of you speak to me a little bit about beyond the data? And it's sort of the same question I asked about to the other group. How do you see yourselves using this data to get more people to use farmers markets?
Well, for one, a big part of our data that we found is that more like just over 50% of the people that receive vouchers don't use the vouchers. So I think personally that we could figure out a more efficient system to get people vouchers who want the vouchers and who are actually going to use them, because right now they actually have to go into a WIC office to pick them up.
Thank you.
Was your data consistent with a lack of buying, particularly fruits and vegetables? Let's see, as compared to, did you compare other foods that were available at farmers markets, like jams and jellies and honey and things like that.
So the data that we receive comes directly from the WIC administrative office, and that doesn't necessarily show us what they're using these checks to purchase at the farmer's market. It just shows if they're being spent or not. So that's kind of the details of the data that we get.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting project. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Next, we'll move on to Maddie Culhane and Caleb Kulik from Marketing and Environmental Justice and Organizational Communication. And they're presenting on investigating trends and patterns in Chinese and American climate change views over time using an index of acceptance, knowledge, concern, and obligation.
As the two largest greenhouse gas polluters and the two largest economies, China and the US are central to the issue of climate change, and thus a better understanding of public views on climate change in these two countries is of great interest. Is climate change happening, and are human actions the primary cause? How concerned are you about climate change, and what should be done to address it? The answers to these questions vary considerably in the US, but what is known about climate change views among Chinese citizens? We surveyed over 18,000 Chinese and American citizens in 2015, 2017, and 2020 to provide analysis and comparisons of climate change views. Across these 3 years of surveys, nearly 80% of Chinese respondents said that human actions were the primary cause of climate change, compared to just under 60% of Americans. And nearly 90% of Chinese respondents said that individuals have an obligation to act to prevent climate change, compared to just over 70% of Americans. To further illustrate the differing climate change views in China and the US, we use responses to a series of questions to construct a climate change index, yielding an easily comparable metric for climate change views, with a higher score conveying more alignment with the scientific realities of climate change.
The average climate change index score in China was significantly greater than in the US for all 3 years, while there was significantly more variation among American respondents compared to the Chinese. We also saw very little change in Chinese climate change views over the 3 years, while there was a large change in climate change views among Americans between 2015 and 2017, but with little change in 2020. Underlying the variation in American views on climate change is a significant political division, with liberals scoring the highest and conservatives scoring the lowest in all 3 years. Research by the Yale Center for Climate Change Communication suggests that people around the world, and especially in the US, do not frequently talk about climate change. They also point out that talking more about climate change will be an essential step for meaningful climate change policy action. To this end, our project objectives are to continue working with our Chinese and American partners to collect data and disseminate information in order to facilitate and stimulate discussion related to climate change views in these two important countries. Although our planned 2020 trip to China was canceled due to the pandemic, we are planning to return to China in 2022 to conduct more in-person research and collaborate with our Chinese faculty and student partners.
Thank you, Maddie and Caleb. Are there any questions?
What do you think the relationship is between what the Chinese people think and what the government thinks and does? And the same question with the American people and the relationship to the American government.
Well, it's tough to, I guess, have a one-to-one understanding of the relationship between actual public opinion views versus policy. We, for example, did see a significant increase, like I said, in American understanding of the science behind climate change from 2015 to 2017. But in that same time period, the administration was elected, which backed us out of the Paris Climate Accords. So it's tough to find a one-to-one, I guess, relationship between those two things. But that's part of our research for sure, is trying to understand what drives people to make the decisions they do politically.
and personally in behavior, behaviors.
Mhm.
If you noted that as a population, people who live in China, it seems to correlated a stronger personal, I guess, responsibility. So I'm not sure where I was going with that, but as a public official, I'm always interested in how you get to the person. How do you understand them and change their behavior? It's a difficult leadership conundrum.
It's interesting to see how those things can match up, and sometimes they don't, but interesting research. Thank you.
It's very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Next, we have Emerson Yu from economics, and he's presenting on body regard moderates the relationship between anxiety and suicidal ideation. And there you are. You may begin.
So in order to understand why this topic is important, I think it's important to understand who I am as a person too. I'm a Malaysian international student, and as a Malaysian, I come from a country with a lot of mental health and suicide stigma. A lot of my friends and family, and even myself, have been put in situations where we struggle with mental health and don't have the resources that we need. On top of that, Malaysia is also a country with the highest obesity rate in Southeast Asia. But aside from being a Malaysian, I'm also a student. Working with suicide prevention, we know that more than 30% of all students in the past year have struggled with anxiety or depression to such a large extent that they've actually found it difficult to struggle, and that less than 10%, a little bit less than 10% of our students have actually seriously considered suicide in the past year. And so we know that suicide prevention is such an important issue, but at the same time, research has found that we don't know enough about suicide ideation. Why do people think about suicide? There's so much more to be explored. But we do know certain things though. So one of the things that we know is that anxiety plays a huge role in that. Up to 70% of people who attempt suicide have had some sort of anxiety disorder. And we also know that on more of the body side, how somebody thinks about their body, how somebody cares about their body, that also affects the way that they think about suicide and how much they think about it. So we wanted to look then at all three of these variables, right? Suicide ideation, body regard, anxiety, how do they all interact? In a survey we did of a little bit less than 400 students, we found that when somebody cares a lot about the way their body is perceived, when they care a lot about taking care of their body, even when anxiety was high, the amount that they think about suicide was significantly lower. In contrast, when somebody does not really care as much for their own body or has a negative perception of their body, or even if that's average and still at high anxiety, suicide ideation and how much they thought about suicide was a lot higher. Well, this is important implications because this can be a key intervention for working with trying to help suicide prevention, right? When you can target specific populations like that of Malaysia, go in there and build that trust through effective suicide prevention implementation, you're able to effectively build that trust and reduce the stigma in that population. And from that, effectively saving lives.
Thank you, Emerson. Are there any questions from the judges?
Emerson, what do you think we can do, because you talked about globally, but also on campus, what do you think we can do on campus to improve individuals' body regard as a way to help prevent suicide?
I think in order to implement that, a lot of that is just sort of understanding a lot more research about like how do people on campus first perceive their own body, right? Through understanding that, you could plan more implementations, whether that could be dining, whether that could be with creating more advocacy for positive body image and just caring more about their body, right? Not necessarily about like, oh, you need to care about your body in this way, but just having a positive self-image in your body, right? We talk a lot about how do we destigmatize mental health? But with mental health, there's just so many different complex components of that you need to work on first to be able to build up to that so people can actually effectively have the protective factors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emerson. Thank you, judges. We will move on next to Megan Rail from Economics, presenting on identifying opportunities for Wisconsin to participate in advanced energy manufacturing. Great, you may begin.
Awesome. December 7th, 1941. Everything in the US changed as we entered World War II. In Eau Claire, individuals went to war and also companies moved into wartime production. For example, Presto Industries began producing wartime components and ammunition instead of aluminum cookware. In many ways, the US is currently in the same type of battle, and that is the battle against climate change. We do not currently have the same amount of supply of goods to produce the amount of green energy manufacturing and green energy as needed in order to slow climate change. According to a 2018 UN report, in order for climate change to be slowed down, the US will need to have net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This includes drastically increasing our solar panels, wind turbines, the capacity to produce this much of things like solar panels. My name is Megan Rail, and I am a supply chain in economics. There were two major problems. The first being that we didn't understand what the capacity is to transition. We weren't sure, based on labor and infrastructure, how industries could move and what their capacity was to do that. Additionally, the current US Census data is not sufficient. We were able to identify $30 billion of industries that could be transitioned into the production of green energy components. Additionally, we were able to provide recommendations for the data that needs to be included, not point companies such as Presto that can be heavily transitioned to help produce green energy and beat this battle of climate change.
This is an important local question. We have a labor pool for advanced manufacturers.
And it was just switching molds. It was as simple as switching molds, which then if you subsidize and provide support, the firms will be heavily incentivized to move.
Yeah. That sounds very good.
We did have some situations though that, like, for example, aluminum foundries, that it would be much bigger scale just because of the scale of the item, because obviously a single solar panel component is going to require a lot more transition or a lot less transition than creation of like wind turbine bases that are
research about land utilization, and that's a factor too. You can't just put a factory in at the end of a
today. Now we're running about 10 minutes behind schedule, so we're just going to move straight into the next set of campuses, and I'll introduce our next set of judges. Let me introduce them to you today. First, we have Dr. Ryan Martin, Associate Dean for the College of Arts and Humanities, and so Stephanie Siravatka-Marshall, Director of the Student Center at UW Parkside.
University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. I want to welcome you to this quick pitch competition and want to thank you very much for doing the hard work it takes to participate in an activity like this. I want to congratulate you on taking advantage of opportunities like this to improve your skills and want to wish you the best of luck today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chancellor. Now I'll introduce our first presenter from UW Green Bay. First, we have Rita Ebbett from Organizational Leadership presenting on Wandering Rabbits Habitat. And you may begin.
How many found due to their complex needs, many rescues are unable to financially care for rabbits long term, nor have the space required to do so. And they often find themselves at capacity and needing support from foster families in the community to care for rabbits too ill to be adopted immediately and to help offset overflow. This problem is exacerbated during the Easter season when many people buy rabbits without first considering it involved. This leads to many house rabbits being surrendered or even abandoned to the outdoors, disturbance among the wild rabbit population. Most rabbits who are surrendered and abandoned, which also lengthens their time in shelters and in foster care homes and pet stores to gain insight into how broad a problem this has become in our area, programs in the community. I've begun further research into these educational programs, commitment needed for them to adopt or shop responsibly. Overall, research indicated and revealed that many people still do not understand the complexities of the house rabbit, which leads to many of them being surrendered, resold, or abandoned. By creating education, educate people and provide sanctuary for all house rabbits in need. These actions will help save the lives of many rabbits, lessen their negative impacts in our society, help in building a better future where people are educated before they adopt or shop.
Thank you, Rita. Judges, you can turn on your videos. Any questions?
What surprised as you were interviewing pet stores and others, were there any surprises in the data?
Actually, there was. I was surprised to find that how many rabbits are resold back to pet stores. One of my house rabbits I have right now, Gracie, she was actually, I consider I rescued her, but actually I purchased her from a local pet store that had her sold back because she was found abandoned in a basement in an apartment building with no food or water. So, you know, to me, sometimes I found, because usually I was of the mindset, adopt, don't shop, but that's really changed my mind after interviewing the pet stores, because I realized that they need rescuing from pet stores as much as they do from shelters and outside, because one of the things I also found, pet stores do not also understand the complexities. Like rabbits should never be on pine shavings because it interferes with their respiratory and causes distress. But many times they have them in glass aquariums.
And I think we will move on.
About myself. So if you have workshops or even just addressing this at when you're in high school or like things like that, or developing mentor programs, so there's an easier shift from being a student to being a person in a professional program. So what happens usually is that undergraduate and to graduate programs, a lot of individuals experience imposter syndrome. So you need to start making that progress a little more easier for individuals.
My question is very similar, but ultimately I was wondering about interventions a little more broadly than just institutions. What are things that can be done at other levels? And you mentioned high school in your answer, so maybe you've already answered this.
Yeah, well, you can definitely, like I said, most research relies on the individual. So most research gives individual tips. So like you can say mantras, you can make a list of all your things. But when we address things at the interpersonal in an institution, it's almost separated from yourself. So you need to start addressing those things and making these topics more visible. So you need to start talking about racism, sexism, classism, all these things that actually present themselves in these institutions and in workplaces, explicitly or inexplicitly, and you need to start doing it as soon as you can.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, judges. Let's see. Next, we have Mohammed from Computer Science presenting on Zero Interaction School Attendance System Design Requirements.
Hello everyone, my name is Mohammed. Today I'm going to present about Zero Interaction School Attendance System. Our team developed this zero effort, zero interaction system to help taking attendance of students after they go back to in-person classes. Because we can say COVID-19 has changed the way we interact with each other. And also it has affected how every one of us go about their daily life, or at least knows somebody who has been affected by COVID, either be a family member or a friend. For me, two of my favorite sports players lost their mother in the complication of COVID. One being basketball player Carol Anthony Towns, and the other one being one of the greatest soccer player, Ronaldinho. Under normal circumstance, the way school conduct attendance is manual, using a piece of paper and pencil to record the number of students attending, where a student will put a tick or X next to their name to show that they were present in the class, and hand the piece of paper next to the person sitting next to them. This process continues until the piece of paper reaches the last student in the classroom. The mentioned scenario shows how quick COVID cases could go up because almost all attendees will touch the same piece of paper, or a number of them may share the same pen or pencil. Since this is a massive risk, our team has found a solution to compact the risk and which you will use only a system for no extra cost other than the cost used for the wireless service for the school. Our system will take student attendance with requiring zero effort and zero interaction from students and professors. The only thing students will have to do is install smartphone application in their device on the first day of class. And then after that, the system will be running in the background. The system will be in order for us to end the spread of COVID. What we need to do.
Rise.
And rise.
And rise.
To combat these challenges. We used various methods, which for the sake of time, I will describe simply as solid state reactions and pulse laser deposition to grow a bilayer of YBCO superconductor and PBCGO insulator. We have thoroughly tested this bilayer, which contains the first two layers of the sandwich structure, and the results confirm our fabrication process is highly successful and yields excellent properties, such as the high ICR layer of the SIS junction, which will undergo even more testing to ensure it is high quality and reproducible. Every day, the scientific community works to learn more about the world we live in and how we can benefit our lives from that knowledge. Our research on the development of high temperature Josephson junction devices is an example of such work. System simplicity, higher efficiency, and low-cost production are all benefits of this cutting-edge technology we are in the final stages of fabricating. Thank you everyone for attending, my research advisor, Home Condell, and also WiSys and the UW system for the funding to make this research possible.
Thank you, Julia. Any questions from the judges?
So besides medicine, what are some other industries you could apply this technology to?
That is an excellent question. I didn't include them just because I had such limited time, but these Josephson junction devices are found in, like I was saying, biomagnetic sensors. They're also found in high frequency detectors, which is used in things such as airport security. We also can use Josephson junction devices for geophysical measurements, quantum computing, which is a really growing field, and the military and NASA also use these junctions.
Good. If there aren't any other questions, we will move on. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Great. Next, we have Peter Kavitin from Electrical Engineering presenting on spintronics. You may begin when ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Kavitin. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Parkside, and I've been researching with my professor for a little under a month now. To start off, I want everyone to imagine a scenario. Imagine running across a football field, carrying a full bucket of water, spinning around while trying to get to the other side without spilling anything. Now imagine that you're an electron carrying data. Spintronics is the study of motion of electrons to create more efficient data storage and data transfer. Currently, electrons can hold information on their charge or their spin. In our day and age, technology runs rampant, and as we develop more devices that consume substantial amounts of power, we need more energy efficient ways of holding this information. Current technology uses RAM, or random access memory, in order to do this functionality. One problem with RAM is that it needs a constant supply of energy in order to maintain its function. This is because charge accumulates on the edge of RAM and slowly leaks off. This phenomenon is called charge leakage, and the leakage of charge causes data loss. To fix this data loss, we plan on researching ways of controlling the orientation or spin of an electron in order to hold data on that spin. The orientations of electron are denoted as spin up and spin down. Unlike charges, spin states do not require a constant supply of energy in order to maintain these states. Compared to charge storage, spin states use much less energy in order to pass information. This is because the spin states do not need to move as much as an entire charge would. Rather than charges going through a wire, say from point A to point B, spin states can pass their information from one electron to another without having to move at all. To read data, the electron still does not need to move. Rather, it is read by the orientation of the electron, spin up or spin down, as it passes through a given material. In summary, we move the spin of an electron rather than moving the electron itself through a device. If we can harness this and exploit its properties, we give potential rise to smaller, stabler, and more energy efficient devices. Saving energy saves money. And with that, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions?
Peter, can you talk a little bit about some of the implications of this when it comes to technology? Where might we see that energy saving, that financial saving?
Of course. So currently there are giant server bays that like Google has, or many high-end corporations have large server bays with a bunch of information stored on there. And if we can replace all the RAM with possible spintronic state devices, we can condense all the data into smaller, compactor forms, and we can hold more information in the process and save energy all at the same time.
Great, thank you, Peter. I think we'll move on to the next. So thank you, judges.
Thank you.
So judges can turn off their videos. And so next we have Smruti Umesh from Molecular Biology and Bioinformatics presenting on the effects of wrong time feeding with alcohol on C57BL/6J mice's circadian rhythm. You may begin when ready.
We all know that eating the wrong food and consuming alcohol is unhealthy for us. But do you know that eating and consuming alcohol at the wrong time is even worse? What we decide to do during daytime and what we decide to do during nighttime can have unimaginable health consequences, be it positive or negative. We all have a set of genes that regulate our sleep-wake cycle, and these genes are also responsible for healthy physiological and metabolic functioning. We're all used to eating late, working on our assignment until 2 a.m., and consuming alcohol at odd times. These actions, while they may seem trivial, can disrupt those genes regulating our sleep-wake cycle, which leads to massive physiological and metabolic disorders, such as obesity, cardiovascular diseases, hyperlipidemia, and even cancer. Hi, I'm Smruti Ramesh, and I research at a circadian lab in Dewitt Parkside with Dr. Pearson. We studied how restricting alcohol and food to only day or nighttime affected everyday activity in mice. Activity levels are known to significantly affect those genes regulating our sleep-wake cycle, and maintaining predominant activity during the right time is important for healthy functioning of those genes. So mice are nocturnal animals that are active during the night and sleep during the day. Our results suggest that mice that were fed during nighttime showed heightened activity throughout nighttime, which is an ideal condition, but mice that were fed during daytime were active for less longer during night. Most importantly, we found that mice that consume alcohol during nighttime, which is their activity period, had dangerously low levels of activity or sedentary activity. On the other hand, humans are diurnal beings that are active during daytime and sleep during nighttime. If you translate these results to human beings, eating late at night or consuming alcohol during daytime can make us sedentary during daytime, which is the time period we're supposed to be the most active. If we fail to maintain predominant activity during daytime, which is influenced by eating and alcohol consumption patterns, it can disrupt those genes regulating our sleep-wake cycle, which leads to severe health issues. What can we do about it? Number one, intermittent fasting. It's when you restrict your meals to an 8 or 10-hour window during the day and fast for the rest of the time. There's substantial evidence that intermittent fasting can restore our daily rhythms, which will ultimately lead to tremendous health benefits. Our mice were intermittent fasting as well, but the mice that showed heightened activity throughout the right time were fed during the right time and were fasting for the rest of the time. Number two, do not consume alcohol during daytime. The best time to consume alcohol is early evening, but you should stop 4 hours prior to bedtime. Simply taking the right actions during the day and nighttime can restore us back to good health. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the judges?
So how do you take this research and educate the community about it? I mean, what's the next step do you see in sharing the information that you have learned and the benefits for humans?
Well, number one, in our lab, we are trying to replicate this experiment with mice that have those genes disrupted. So we're going to see how that is going to affect everyday activity. So that's one step we're taking further. And number two, I have not really thought about how to take this further in terms of educating people, or I think, in other words, marketing efforts. But I will think about that though.
What is the next step in your research?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so it is replicating the same setup, which is restricting food and alcohol only during day and nighttime in mice that have those genes deleted. So these are gene knockouts. So they are going to have more severe, they're going to show more abnormal everyday activity. So that's our next step that we're planning to take. That's the next project we're planning to do, but we're still deciding on it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, judges. Thank you, Smruthi. Judges, turn off your video. All right. Well, that concludes the pitches from UW Parkside. Great job, everyone. And while the judges take a moment to finalize their scores, please enjoy this video promotion from UW Parkside.
At the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, we're producing the next generation of leaders. Students studying biosciences, IT, business management, and digital design and fabrication will lead us into a new era of success, powered by bright young minds that solve problems and invent products. And it starts with choosing a university that's affordable, with small class sizes, in-demand programs, and excellent placement rates. See what the future looks like. Visit uwp.edu. Be at Parkside, the University of Wisconsin-Parkside.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. All right. We're moving on to, I believe, our last campus for the evening. And so with UW River Falls, we'd like to first share this welcome message from Chancellor Foster.
Hello, students, families, and the university community. I'm Chancellor Connie Foster from UW River Falls, and I want to welcome you to the Quick Pitch Showcase. Congratulations to all the students participating. I commend you for taking advantage of opportunities like Quick Pitch to demonstrate your hard work and dedication to undergraduate research. Best of luck today, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Chancellor. So now I'll introduce our first presenter from UW River Falls. First, we have Rachel Hoff from Animal Science presenting on Teachable Moments of 2019, an analysis of United States Department of Agriculture Food Safety Inspection Service Humane Handling Enforcement Actions. You may begin.
Why do we care about the humane slaughter of animals? Well, most of us care about animals for a variety of reasons. These can be sentimental, they can be ethical, or they can be economical. For an animal, the slaughter process can be a time of immense suffering, or it can be a relatively painless procedure. Ultimately, what happens to an animal matters to them. This, in and of itself, should be enough to motivate humans to care. Indifference towards animal suffering can be detrimental to not only animals, but also the people that are involved in the process. The Humane Slaughter Act of 1978 is a federal law that seeks to ensure proper treatment and humane handling of food animals at the time of slaughter. The Act has objectives that give food safety inspectors of the USDA the authority to stop inspection, which halts plant operations based on any violation of this Act. These violations then result in humane handling enforcement actions. Each year, the UW River Falls Animal Welfare Lab classifies these violations to better understand the issues involved and then to ultimately aid in fixing those issues. In total, there were 85 reports posted to the USDA website in 2019. Now, that might not seem like a large number, but there may be more than one animal involved in each report, or the one animal in the report may have had to have been stunned more than once, which is a huge mistake. 88.2% of enforcement actions in 2019 were stunning related. These mistakes are in direct violation of the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. Suspension accounted for 56.5% of the actions. This means that in 56.5% of cases, the processing facility had to shut down for the rest of the day. Facilities have direct incentive to try to prevent these mistakes from happening. The project I'll be speaking about today is called Teachable Moments of 2019, an analysis of the United States Department of Agriculture Food Safety and Inspection Service Humane Handling Enforcement Actions. We refer to the project as Teachable Moments because through this project, we have 6 undergraduate students who are able to directly affect the meat processing industry through their classification of egregious mistakes that occur within a meat processing facility. As a result, both the students and the meat industry experience teachable moments in this process. The classification of these humane handling enforcement actions can directly affect the industry by improving training of personnel, improving stunning position, and improving restraint. There were more enforcement actions in 2019 that involved multiple incidents than in all previous years. It is important for establishments to maintain a culture of diligence and doing the right thing for everyone involved, which includes addressing any issues related to humane handling immediately. Having a robust, systematic approach to animal welfare can help to avoid enforcement actions related to the Welfare Act and facilitate rapid and appropriate response when a violation occurs. With the implementation of these systems, the general public can better understand where their food comes from and have confidence that the meat they consume was processed in a way that they deem both appropriate and ethical. In this way, we are bringing together industry and academia. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions from the judges?
Were you able to determine from the data or actually extrapolate from the data some policy that would reduce the number of violations?
Our main goal here is to compile and classify these and then put them together into a report. And that way the different facilities can see exactly what's happening around the country and if they're falling in line or how they're doing compared to the rest of the country. And in this way, if they see that, you know what, we're really falling behind here and we need to pick up our management, They can use these classifications to help them create these robust systems. And we've actually been able to, with our animal welfare lab, we had the opportunity to tour a meat processing facility. And then while we were at the tour, we were actually able to identify something that was a potential risk. And then we were able to help them fix that.
Do you find that the facilities are sort of intrinsically motivated to solve these problems instead of needing some sort of external motivation, like a policy or a consequence?
I would like to say that everyone does the ethical thing because it's the right thing to do. But I think that we all know that that's not how things work. I would say that the biggest motivation is either public perception, and that public perception then pushes policy, or it's economic. And sometimes those things go hand in hand. If your public is purchasing your product and they're pushing for a more robust welfare system, that's where we're really going to see change happen. I do believe that some facilities are doing a good job in their self-monitoring, but I think that most of the time it comes down to public perception and then also economic gain.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, judges. All right. Next, we have Blair Wormuth from Animal Science presenting on an animal welfare focused exploration of the Philadelphia cream cheese dairy supply chain. You may begin.
The vast majority of people care about animals in one way or another. I think most of us can see this in our own lives with the pets that we may have at home or the wildlife that we all appreciate. Though this could also certainly be said about our production animals. People are becoming more and more concerned about where their food comes from. They're faced with that question, is this quote unquote morally good? Not only is the general public becoming more invested in the welfare of these animals and expect them to live a good life, but producers are as well. Like most people, they too care deeply about their animals' well-being, but prior research has also shown us that the average customer is actually willing to pay more for products from humanely treated animals. And on top of that, the World Organization for Animal Health has found that animals with positive health and welfare are significantly more productive. So not only do happy animals equal happy customers, but happy producers as well. This is definitely something which food brands, such as the Philadelphia Cream Cheese Company, have taken note of, as they often use certification programs where benchmarks are set for farms and their practices. While programs such as this do help us form a general idea of how things are being run on a dairy farm, there's still quite a bit of things that we don't know, especially in our area of interest, that being the rearing of dairy calves. Now, current research is available to show us some of the best known practices for calf care and management. Though the issue here is that many producers may not have immediate access to this welfare research, or they may not know how to properly utilize it within their own facilities. Outside guidance would be beneficial in providing these operations with the potential steps that they need to take. But in order for this brand to know exactly where changes need to be made, it's necessary to know where their operations stand currently. Our goal here is to identify what practices are actually being performed on the farm and to make recommendations based on thorough scientific literature reviews. Our research is going to be broken up into two main portions, the first being the aforementioned literature review, and the second being a survey of current farm practices. Our objective here is to gain a solid understanding of current calf care, final destinations, and final welfare outcomes, and their effects on overall calf welfare. Based on these sets of information, a summary of both areas of strength and weakness can be identified and presented with practical recommendations for on-farm changes. Ultimately, our goal is to form a set of research-supported guidelines for the dairies used within the production of Philadelphia cream cheese products. Our hope is that our study will help form standards which will be beneficial to the consumer as to ensure them that their products are coming from dairies using the best care practices available, beneficial to food producers for the profits from marketing the high standards that they place upon their sources, and of course to ensure that these calves are given the highest possible standard of care and management in exchange for the service that they're providing us. Thank you all so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Blair. Judges, you can get ready. Do you have any questions?
how would you encourage the companies to take up the findings of your research?
So we were actually reached out to by Philadelphia Cream Cheese for this. So we're focusing on the dairies within their system. But I think the main thing is public perception. As Rachel was talking about earlier, that is one of the driving forces. Of course, people do have intrinsic motivation to care about animals, but there's also other factors too, such as profits. Like I said, more people are willing to pay for products that are advertised as being humane, or that animals that are treated right are often found to produce more. So basically, you have to present the pros and cons to companies, and that's the best way to get the job done.
Very good. Thank you, Blair. Thank you, judges. Okay. Now we have Kaylee Wigman from Dairy Science presenting on effects of suckling on pain behavior in calves disbudded with caustic paste. You may begin.
Do you like cheese? My favorite's Gouda. Another favorite thing of mine are dairy cows, especially dairy calves. Not only are dairy calves cute, but they also are the foundation of the dairy farm. As the foundation of the farm, management is the key to success. One of these management practices is disbudding, which is the removal of the horn before it can grow. This can be done through the use of caustic paste, which basically chemically burns the growing tissue before it can form. This is a painful burn. It can last for more than 5 hours. However, it is a much more manageable way than getting gouged by a horn by either a cow or a worker working with the cows. So current pain management is ineffective as it takes extensive training to do, and it only lasts for 1 hour, along with being only drug-based. This is where my research steps in. My research is on providing a new way that farmers can implement long-lasting, long-term pain with self-management through the use of pacifiers for calves. I know, pacifiers, but what other animals can you think of that we use pacifiers for? Well, not many, but if you think in terms of babies, we use pacifiers all the time. If they start fussing, we put a pacifier and it soothes them. This is the same principle that we are using because it is the brain's automatic response to suckle. When they suckle, they release feel-good hormones, which will reduce their pain. This will provide the farmer a much easier way that will last for long-term, hopefully covering the 5 hours, and it is non-pharmaceutical. Why is this important to provide pain management? Well, happy cows produce a lot more. They develop better, and they can eventually grow to be the best cows that the farmer could possibly have. So by implementing pacifiers, they could produce the best cows that they ever had to produce the best milk to produce the best Gouda in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee. I'd say using pacifiers, I've turned out the best kids, but I'm sure every parent might say that. Anyways, are there any questions from the judges?
How do you envision encouraging people to implement such approaches?
So with farmers, it's like I said, pacifiers, people look at you like you have two heads, which I mean, I get that, but it's a very simple tool to use because you literally just strap it on there and then you could forget about it. And they just use that whenever they feel like they're in pain or they're stressed. And that's a really easy, really cheap tool. And it also helps them grow and develop a lot better. And it's just making an option that they can use.
How will you determine if this intervention is successful?
So currently we are videotaping, and through an ethogram, you watch for pain behaviors. So there's certain pain behaviors that calves do show. And so we're analyzing the pain behaviors to see if calves pasted with the pacifier show less than pasted without the pacifier. And there's shams in there, so we know if they just use the pacifier just because it's there, because they're like, oh, yay, toy. But so yeah.
Great, very good. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, judges. All right, everyone. Well, this officially wraps up all of our pitches for today. Thank you. Congratulations to all the presenters, and thank you to the judges. Awesome job, everybody. A virtual round of applause for all. I'm sure everybody at home is applauding as well. So we'll now ask the judges to finish up their scores and join our conference line and finalize the awards. And so while they do that, please enjoy this video promotion from UW River Falls.
I wanted to be somewhere where I'm more than just a number.
Something that really was important to me was kind of that connection I was making with faculty.
River Falls was a clear choice for me just strictly because of the agriculture program.
I originally was touring 11 colleges, and that was too many colleges.
It was close to home, but also far enough away that I got my own space.
I chose to attend UW River Falls because of its close location to my hometown of Cottage Grove. And I knew River Falls had a great program in physics and also computer science.
My first visit, I sat down with Dr. Courtwright from the neuroscience department, and then I came back to campus and he was like, Faith, how's your college search going? And he knew exactly who I was, remembered me, and that kind of solidified it. I was like, if this guy can remember me after one time meeting me, I think I'll be able to get to know faculty well.
When I came here for a preview day, I was able to meet with not only the Dean of the College of Arts and Science, but also the head of the biology department. To come and meet with a prospective student, it just immediately set this campus apart from everybody else because it showed how much they cared about their students. I didn't get that at any other of the colleges that I toured.
The thing I love most about the campus here is the inclusivity. Within the campus and the community, I always feel like I'm at home, whether it's at class, talking to professors, in the clubs, or even just grocery shopping. I feel like I belong here and I have found a true home here.
Every time I walk around campus, someone has to say hi to me or I say hi to someone else because everyone is so close-knit here.
I also really love that there was a farm here and I got hands-on experience for my pre-vet program. I loved that right as a freshman, we started out at the farms, like first class, let's go. Like, I loved that.
I had compared it to a lot of larger campuses and universities. Seeing those made me think that smaller campus than larger universities would be more desirable, and I think that River Falls, it for sure turned out that way.
I knew that coming to River Falls would put me on the right path.
All right, thank you. So I know we are still running a few minutes behind, so I ask you to just please sit tight for a quick moment while we get set to announce the winners. All right, everybody. We're back to announce the winners for the Campus Quick Pitch Showcases. First, another congratulations to all the students who presented today. You've all made great strides in the last few weeks as you prepared for today. We commend you for taking part in this competition. You all did a fantastic job. Thank you. So now I'll get into the awards. The first place winners from all the campuses and categories today win a $300 cash prize. And the second place winners take home a $100 cash prize for the categories at UW-Eau Claire. The first place winners today are also invited to represent their campus at this year's Quick Pitch State Final on Wednesday, May 26th. So mark your calendars. As we begin, I'd like to ask the award winners to stay after we conclude for a quick screenshot picture. As students, you should also be prepared that if your name is called, we would like you to turn on your video feed for just a quick wave. We'll also snap a screenshot of each group of campus winners as well. So now, the moment we've all been waiting for. We'll start with UW-Eau Claire in the Science and Technology category. Second place goes to the group of Sydney Dame and Danielle Zahn. Congratulations. Wonderful. So next I'll announce first place. So the first place for UW-Eau Claire in the Science and Technology category is Carl Fossum. Wonderful. Congratulations. Next, we'll announce the Social Sciences and Humanities category at UW-Eau Claire. Second place goes to the group of Mark Fior and Katrina Kowalk. Great. Congratulations. And finally, the first place for UW-Eau Claire in the Social Sciences and Humanities category are Maddie Culhane and Caleb Kulik. Congratulations. Can all four prize winners turn on from UW-Eau Claire, turn on your cameras for a second, and we'll just take a quick screenshot from UW-Eau Claire. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So now we'll announce the winners for UW Parkside. So this year's Quick Pitch winner for UW Parkside is Julia Jones. Yay. Love that. Congratulations. Next, we'll announce UW Green Bay. And the winner for UW Green Bay, the first place winner, is Kelly House. Congratulations. Last but not least, we'll announce the winners for UW River Falls. First place for UW River Falls is Blair Wormuth. Wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who participated today. This concludes the WiSys Quick Pitch Showcase for April. Congratulations to everybody and to all the campus winners. Thank you to our panels of judges. Thank you to our campus research partners for supporting this activity and all the staff and faculty mentors who guided your students throughout the program. Thank you to the WiSys staff for taking part in this event and making it happen. And thank you to all the attendees who supported your students and campuses participating today. Join us right here, back here on Zoom for the last Quick Pitch Showcase on May 5th, featuring UW-Platteville, UW-Stevens Point, and UW-Stout. And again, the state final will be on Wednesday, May 26th. See you then, and have a great night. Award winners, if we could just take everybody from all the campuses who